What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us tonight. This is going to be different. This is going to be new. But thanks for joining us tonight. If we've never met, if you don't know who I am, my name is Nick Williams. I'm the student pastor at Bartlesville First Church of the Nazarene. And this is our weekly meeting, our Wednesday night programming for the next few weeks. We're going to be meeting digitally, not in person. Hopefully, before we finish this series, we'll be meeting back in person, but who knows what that's going to look like and when that's going to be. But a couple thoughts before we jump in. When I was in sixth grade, when I was 11 years old, 9/11 happened, September 11th, 2001. And I will never forget, I was in my math class at Collinsville Middle School here in Oklahoma. And a teacher walked into our math class and told our teacher what was going on. We turned on the TV and watched everything unfold. And I will never forget the silence in the school that day. I will never forget leaving school, driving by a gas station, and there were dozens and dozens and dozens of cars lined up waiting to get gas. And looking back now, that day defined our generation. That day defined what the 2000s looked like. It defined what middle school and high school looked like in a way. There was a lot that happened because of that. And looking at this situation now and how it's escalated, for you middle schoolers and high schoolers, this is going to be a defining moment for your generation. This is going to be something that you will look back on and remember details that you would never remember otherwise. So a request from me as we move through this season together, take some time to stop and reflect, to pause and think about what's going on, to think about the emotions you have, whether they're good or bad, to think about the fear, to think about the panic, to think about what you're seeing. Because this is something that will define your generation. And that's neither good nor bad. It is just the reality of life. But don't miss this, because someday you're going to look back on this. You're going to look back on what happened and how you felt. And that matters. Your story matters. So don't miss that. Tonight, we're jumping into a new series and a new format called Challenge the Chaos. This season is full, if you have not noticed, is full of chaos. It's full of fear. It's full of panic. And rightfully so. This is a serious thing going on. But I think that as Christians, as followers of Christ, there's a specific way we should respond. And there's a specific attitude and a specific culture way we should be living into the culture. So we're going to talk about this through this series, Challenge the Chaos. And as we go through this, we're going to talk about several things, from challenging ourselves to challenging the fear, challenging the panic, challenging the depression and the isolation. And we're going to wrap everything up in a few weeks about challenging the future and what's coming next. But before we get there, two parts with this series. We're going to have two challenges each week. One is just going to be for fun, just for something different through our week. The other is going to be as part of our lesson. But the first challenge, the fun part, we're going to talk about it here in a sec, but take a look at this video. Isn't that awesome? So here's a challenge this week. Go find a hoodie, go find a blindfold, go find a pillow, and then spin around a few times, and let's have a blindfolded pillow fight. And do us a favor, the rest of us, record it and put it on the Facebook page. Send it to me, I'll put it up. But we'd love to be able to laugh at some stuff, have some joy in these moments. But join us in that. Let's just have some fun together, and have a stupid pillow fight. I think it would be a blast for us to just be able to have some fun and laugh at each other through these weeks. Now, jumping in tonight, talking about challenging ourselves, we are jumping into Daniel, the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 1 through 8. And here is what it says out of the New Living Translation. During the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it with his armies. The Lord gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah. When Nebuchadnezzar had returned to Babylon, he took with him some of the sacred objects from the temple of God and placed them in the treasure house of his God and in the land of Babylonia. So we see right at the beginning, in 2 verses, there's a ton going on. So the king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, he decides he wants Judah. So he takes his army, they besiege Judah, and they win. The kingdom of Judah falls, and what we don't see here is that they took the people from Judah. They literally took the people. Nebuchadnezzar walked into the temple of God and took stuff from there and put it in his own treasure house. But this was war, and then this was kidnapping almost. And there is a lot of panic and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of doubt going on here that we don't see. Reading between the lines, this is terrifying. That another nation walks in and literally starts killing people and taking people out of their homes. That's literally the start of this story. And then we jump into verse 3. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, who was in charge of the palace officials, to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good sense, and have the poise needed to serve in the royal palace. Teach these young men the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily ration of the best food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for a 3-year period, and then some of them would be made his advisors in the royal court. So King Nebuchadnezzar looks at a royal official in his court and says, I have a job for you. I need you to go through all the people we took captive and to find the best. Find the smartest, find the strongest, find the tallest, find the best looking out of all of the people we took. And so then he goes on to tell Ashpenaz, his court official, after you find these individuals, make sure they're the best. After you find them, bring them back. We're going to train them up. I want you to feed them the best food we have. They're going to eat what I eat. I want you to train them in the best training we have. They're going to know what I know. And which is insane in one part, because these are people that have been taken from their homes, taken from their land, and dropped into a completely different culture. Now, don't forget the fear, the panic, the isolation. This is terrifying. But King Nebuchadnezzar, this is totally just weird. He wants to train them up to be his advisors. Like, why would you train up an enemy to be your advisor? Now, there's a whole bunch of context we're not going to get into, But they were literally replacing the culture of Judah for the culture of Babylon. He was training them to be Babylonians. He was not training them just to be advisors. He was training them to be his subjects. He was training them in all of their doctrines, in all of their beliefs. Then we jump into this next part. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief official renamed them with these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, Azariah was called Abednego. But Daniel made up his mind not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief official for permission to eat other things instead. So Ashpenaz goes through all the captives to find the best, to find the sharpest, to find the tallest, to find the strongest. And he comes across these 4 men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We know them from a later story in the book of Daniel. But he finds these men and he's like, these are the best. This is what the king told me to do. These are some of the best. And Daniel stops. The training's outlined for them. They know what's coming. They know what's happening. And Daniel stops, talks to the court official, and says, I'm not going to live into what you've given me to live into. I'm not going to be who you would have me to be. So Daniel says to him, can I make this one exception for myself? Don't make me eat the king's food. Don't make me be that. And it goes on in the next few verses that the court official agrees, and Daniel said, well, let's challenge it. Let's see what happens. And so he said, I'll eat my food. You let everybody else eat your food. And at the end of this period, we're going to see who's best. We're going to see who's doing the best. And so they go through all this, and lo and behold, Daniel is the strongest. He's the tallest. He's the best looking. He's the sharpest. He's the smartest. All of these things, all because he lived into who God had him to be. He didn't live into what was placed before him. So challenge for this week before we move on is to read Daniel chapter 1 to continue what we started, and chapter 2. And if you want to keep going, the whole book is fantastic. It's only 12 chapters. To read the whole book of Daniel, chapter 1 through 12, and to see, what happens, to see how this shapes up for Daniel. And there's some crazy stories in there. It is very good, but for the minimum, Daniel chapter 1 and 2. Now, a couple thoughts how this applies to us. What does this mean for us? How does this apply to what's going on right now in our day? One, most challenges come in the midst of rough times. Rarely do challenges come in the easiest times when everything is right, when everything is working. Most challenges come in the midst of the rough waters and in the midst of all the crappiness. That's a reality. The biggest challenges come in this. And Daniel is literally, they've been removed from their homes, and he's been placed in the king's court to be a king's advisor. And he has a choice to make. He gets to decide what happens. He gets to decide how he lives into this situation. Most challenges come in the midst of the storm. Number 2, as you all know, we don't get to pick the situation. The tribe of Judah didn't get to pick whether or not the Babylonians were going to come in. That just happened. They didn't get to decide that. Just like now, we didn't get to pick whether or not this was happening. We're not writing this story. This is never something we would pick. Now, if you're like a movie writer, this is perfect. This is prime real estate for a movie. But that's not us. That's not the culture we're living in. We're living this day in, day out. We didn't get to pick it. But that brings me to my next thing. We get to choose how we respond. So number 3, we get to choose how we respond to the challenge. We get to choose how we respond to the chaos. We get to choose how we respond to the fear, to the panic, to all of these different things, we get to make that decision. We may not get to pick the situation, but we get to choose how to respond. In following the story, this is why you should go read the rest of at least Daniel chapter 1. God works through Daniel's courage of stepping out and being something different. He works through Daniel's challenge to himself to live differently than everybody else. That's our challenge this week, to be different, to live different than the culture, to not give in to the fear, to not give in to the panic, to be different than everybody else, to go against the grain. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go around seeing everybody from 2 feet away. That doesn't mean you need to go cough on everyone. Definitely don't do that. But choose to live differently in the situation you've been given. So here's one thought to close, and then I want to pray over you guys, and I want to give you some directions following this. One of the biggest moments of growth we ever experience, with very few exceptions, one of the biggest moments of growth usually comes in the hardest steps we take. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. You will never lose weight sitting on the couch. Never lose weight sitting on the couch. No benefit has ever come from binge watching Netflix. I love Netflix. I love TV. I love getting to partake of that stuff. But there's no benefit in binge watching Netflix. You've never gained anything from keeping up with Snapchat or TikTok. Those things don't carry any benefit. They may amuse you for a while, but they don't carry any benefit. You have never gotten good grades from choosing to play Smash Brothers or Mario Kart instead of doing your homework or studying for a test. The most growth we will ever get comes from choosing to make hard decisions and doing hard things. So let me pray over you, and then don't leave yet, because I have a few details for you. God, thank you for the chance to be here. Thank you for the technology to be able to do this. God, I just ask that you speak to us. You continue to love on us, bring us peace in this season. God, encourage us as well as we go throughout our week in whatever shape that takes, wherever that is. God, we love you. We ask these things in your name. Amen. So a couple details. In the next screen, you're going to see a few questions. There is 7 of them. Parents, if you're watching this with your students, whether they're elementary, middle school, or high school, or college, if you're watching this as a family, I'd love for you guys to take some time to work through these questions together. This normally would be our small group time on a Wednesday night. We would split up from here and go into some different small groups. But I'd love for you guys to do this on your own, in your own space at home. Students, if you're watching by yourself, if you're just sitting in your bedroom watching this, thanks for watching. But if you're not watching with anybody else, if you don't have the space to work through these questions, go through these questions and shoot me some answers. Send me a message on Facebook, shoot me a text message, and let's talk about it. Let's take some moments to dig a little bit deeper about what it looks like to challenge ourselves in the middle of all of this. So questions will pop up here. Feel free to pause the video on those. Otherwise, we love you guys. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. We're praying for you. Thanks for being here.